Welcome back, pod people.
Hey guys, welcome back.
This is Bev.
And this is Diz.
And this is...
You got it. It's trigger warning.
Okay, so it's my turn today. I have a disaster.
A disaster?
I'm going to give you some trigger warnings here.
Oh dear, okay.
Okay, so we've got death by drowning, death by fire, death by crushing.
Oh my gosh.
Death of a child.
Aww.
Death of an unborn child. Environmental pollution. Eyewitness accounts of traumatic events. And claustrophobia.
That is horrible.
Yeah, we got a little bit of everything in this one. And I'm just going to be your Debbie Downer for the day.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So if any of those things or all of those things are too much for you, if you're already in kind of a dark space, this one isn't going to be for you.
Maybe come back next week.
Yeah, this is one of those I had to do a little bit and then give myself a break and walk away for a while.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So today's episode is about the collapse of the Interstate 35 West Mississippi Bridge.
Oh, wow.
The collapse of the Interstate 35 West Bridge is a terrifying story about people. People who died, people who survived, and the families of both. It's also about the stories of bystanders who witnessed the event and put themselves in danger to help complete strangers. It's the story of search and rescue personnel, chaplains, firefighters, ambulance drivers, rescue divers, and a host of elected officials and city personnel who rushed to the scene to help, to investigate, to pray, and to do anything they could to help all the other people that it impacted. It's a story about people, and that's what I'm going to focus on. But under the human story is one that involves something that's kind of boring. Infrastructure. So, the Oxford English Dictionary defines infrastructure as the basic physical and organizational structures and facilities, buildings, roads, power supplies, needed for the operation of a society or enterprise.
So fancy sounding.
I know, it is. In its simplest definition, it's the stuff society is built on.
Literally.
In movies, it's the stuff that gets destroyed first in disaster films.
Yes.
So when I was younger, I thought basically that infrastructure is what politicians talk about. It's something that always needs to be updated, and it's expensive, and no one wants taxes to go up because of it. So that's what I would hear on the news as a kid. Blah, blah, infrastructure, blah, blah, money, blah, blah, taxes. So what the I-35 West Bridge collapse taught me, and probably a lot of other people, was that infrastructure sounds kind of boring when it isn't a priority. But it can be very suddenly eye-opening when it becomes a priority.
Oh, man.
It also taught me that I'd rather pay higher taxes to maintain our infrastructure than lose someone because they drove over a bridge that suddenly fell out from under them.
Amen, girl.
So, on August 1st, 2007, a school bus full of kids and counselors slowly made their way back home.
Oh, my gosh.
The group was worn out, having spent the day at a suburban water park as part of an outing arranged by the Pillsbury United Communities Wait House. The organization is a community development and human services agency built in the low-income Phillips neighborhood of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Wait House trips were a great way for the kids to have fun, hang out with other kids, and gain experiences in a safe environment. Their water park trip was no exception, and as some of the kids and counselors dozed on the bus home, others excitedly chatted with friends or imagined bombarding their parents with tales of their adventure when they got home. So they were due back at the Wait House at 6 p.m., where their parents would be picking them up. But at 6:05 p.m., they were stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic on Interstate 35 West, which was an 8-lane highway that stretched over the Mississippi River.
Oh my gosh, 8 lanes.
It was 6:05 p.m. when the bridge suddenly collapsed, causing the bus to plummet 45 feet and finally land tilted at a sickening angle, intact, but with the threat of falling into the river, halted only by a guardrail.
Oh my gosh.
The bus driver, Kimberly Dahl, was quick thinking. She kept her foot on the brake and then activated the parking brake. One was to prevent the bus from sliding forward. The other was to prevent it from rolling backward. One of the counselors, a 20-year-old named Jeremy Hernandez, kicked open the back door and began getting the children out. The counselors formed a makeshift assembly line and began passing the kids to him. Two of them, 10-year-old Ariana and 5-year-old David, were Kim, the bus driver's, her own children. They refused to leave at first. They didn't want to leave their mom behind, but Kim insisted that they go. She had to hold the brakes until all the kids and the counselors were safe. A 21-year-old senior at University of Minnesota, James Hansen, helped Kim off the bus. And as it turns out, Kim was the most severely injured person on the bus. She held the bus in position until it could be evacuated, not knowing that she had a broken back.
Shut your freaking mouth.
In the years after the collapse, she had several surgeries and suffered from PTSD. Next to the bus was a truck that had fallen alongside them. The truck slid forward and struck another slab of concrete, causing it to catch fire. The truck driver, Paul Eichstad, didn't survive. He was 51 and had been driving a delivery truck for Sara Lee Bakery, or Tasty, for 14 years. That day, he had just started his shift and was heading out of town to Iowa when he got caught up in traffic on the bridge. The image of his burning truck next to the abandoned school bus is one of the most memorable ones from the media coverage of the collapse. One of the things that I find most interesting about disasters like this is the randomness of it all. The truck driver was probably on that stretch of bridge fairly often, especially if he had a set route. The bus full of kids, though, wouldn't have been there if it hadn't happened to be the day of the trip to their water park. Another survivor, Garrett Ebling, normally wouldn't have been anywhere near the bridge either. But he had just started a new career working in communications and had gone to the Como Park or Como Zoo, it was listed both ways, and St. Paul for a company picnic. Garrett, who had gotten engaged the weekend prior, was stuck in the slow-moving traffic when he suddenly saw, quote, a sea of red-orange because everyone is hitting their brakes at the same time. He said he looked up and saw several cars just drop and vanish. When his car, too, began to fall, he locked his elbows and knees and thought, just ride it out, ride it out. His car fell 110 feet into the river. The water came up to his neck. He lost consciousness, at least temporarily. Two men helped him get out of the vehicle when they saw him trying to free himself, but Garrett said he doesn't actually remember that. For him, he was falling, and then it was 3 weeks later he was waking up in the hospital from a medically induced coma.
Oh my gosh.
He had suffered trauma to the brain from a serious blow to the head. He also had fractures of every facial plate in his face.
Oh.
Working from photos, surgeons performed 2 surgeries to basically rebuild his face. His colon had been severed by his seatbelt. Both of his ankles were broken, and his left arm, which was his dominant one, was severely broken. He also had a collapsed lung, a ruptured diaphragm, was given a tracheotomy, and had a spinal injury. His jaw had to be wired shut, and he had tubes coming out of him all over the place. One was even coming from the top of his skull, draining excess fluid from his head. Due to the excessive trauma all over his body, he was swelling all over. During the colon surgery, they had to stop the procedure temporarily due to the fear that he wouldn't survive. They had to complete it a different day. Garrett lived, but he was one of the most severely injured people who did. Of course, the healing doesn't stop once the surgeries are done and the bones are healed. He faced months of physical therapy, learning to walk again, learning to do things in new ways as his dominant arm healed, and all while dealing with the symptoms of PTSD.
Yeah.
Today, he still deals with the after effects. He permanently lost his sense of smell and has some areas on his face that are numb. He suffers pain in his ankles as well and still faces issues from PTSD, although he learned through therapy to recognize and deal with his symptoms and process his emotions. Now, had Patrick Holmes survived his drive across the bridge that day, he may have been able to help Garrett Ebling with his recovery. 36-year-old Patrick was an exercise therapist who crossed the bridge regularly over the 5 years he'd worked in that position. His wife Jennifer got the call after midnight that he was one of the victims of the tragedy. One source says he died instantly. Another said he may have survived the initial impact, but then died when a piece of the highway fell on his car. Along with his wife, Patrick left behind 2 children, a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. Patrick had been a member of the St. Paul Municipal Men's League baseball team, but had left in 2006 to coach his son's t-ball team and was planning to coach soccer that fall. His wife said he had high hopes for his daughter to get into sports as well. When he left the men's league team, Patrick sent an email to his teammates explaining, quote, "My job is to raise my kids and make them the best people they can be. Hopefully my enthusiasm towards baseball will rub off on them and they'll get as much enjoyment out of it as I have. My life has to turn the page. It's not about me anymore." Jennifer said he was a great husband and a wonderful father. His funeral was attended by over 600 people, including people from many stages of his life and multiple teams he played on. Former teammates from St. Paul's wore black and white armbands that read Homer 21. Homer was a nickname stemming from his last name, Holmes, and 21 was his jersey number.
Oh.
They retired his jersey number the week before. At the end of the funeral, as the attendees were filing out, the organist switched from the hymn that was being played to Take Me Out to the Ball
Oh my
Game.
gosh, I knew you were going to say that. Gave me cold chills.
And some of the guys from the team did the 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out part of the song as they were leaving. Unfortunately, Jennifer Holmes wasn't the only wife waiting to hear from her husband on August 1st, hoping for the best but dreading the worst. Betsy and Scott Sathers got married on September 30th, 2006. They'd had less than a year to settle into married life together, but they often rode into work together in the mornings since they both worked in downtown Minneapolis. On August 1st, though, Scott had to go in early, so they decided to drive separately. Like most people crossing the bridge that day, they had plans that evening. Scott was going to meet Betsy back home at 6 p.m., and they were going to go out and pick up their car. They were getting a new car. And then they were going to go to dinner and have a date night. At dinner, they were going to finalize plans for Scott's 30th birthday, which was on Saturday, August 4th. Saturday would be the celebration with friends. Unbeknownst to Scott, though, Betsy had planned a surprise party for him with friends and co-workers at the Twins game on Friday, August 3rd. Betsy spoke with Scott throughout the day, here and there, making sure everything was on track for the evening, like we always all do with our spouses.
Mm-hmm.
Then at 5:50 p.m., when he should have been getting close to home, Scott called her. He'd just left his office at Capella University, where he worked as an enrollment director. He said, "Don't be mad. He was running late. He was about to get on 35W. It's funny, in Minnesota, they said all of them called it 35W.
Oh.
All of them. Scott didn't make it home. Scott's friends said he was always the entertainer, always making sure people were enjoying themselves. And though he remained close to his friends, he changed when he married Betsy. One friend said that he completely focused on making her happy. Scott was always excited about everything. He loved Betsy, adored their 2 dogs, Dirk and Daisy, and loved life. Before his passing, he and Betsy had discussed having children. And despite him being gone, Betsy decided to become a mom, adopting twins from Haiti shortly after they were born, and in a way, honoring the man she loved. Another mom-to-be was on the bridge that day. Tina Hickman was driving to a book club meeting and made a call to her friend telling her she was running late. It was a very hot day, so she needed to change her clothes before the meeting. She told her friend that she had to get off the phone because traffic would be bad since it was rush hour, but that she would see her soon. Tina had started a second career as a teacher in the 2004-2005 school year, and she and her husband had decided they were going to start their family. She was due at the beginning of 2007-2008 school year. In fact, she had hired her substitute teacher on August 1st, 2007. But she doesn't remember that because after making that phone call to her friend, the bridge collapsed and her whole world went black. Tina woke up on August 29th
Oh my gosh.
in the hospital, her son Jackson having been delivered by emergency C-section. Tina suffered from a traumatic brain injury. She spent a couple more weeks in the hospital and then went home in mid-September. She was off from work for a year, suffering from migraines, vertigo, and other neurological issues. Jackson was actually born around 7 p.m., so about an hour after the collapse. He suffered no ill effects, was perfectly healthy. And Tina's family makes sure to celebrate Jackson's birthday on August 1st each year instead of focusing on the anniversary of her traumatic accidents.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackson Hickman's survival was lucky. Tina was far enough along in her pregnancy that he was born without complications. Sadly, that wasn't the case for another woman caught up in the disaster. 23-year-old Sadia Sahal was driving on August 1st, 2007, when the bridge collapsed. Depending on the source, she was either going to a relative's house or going to pick up a friend that needed a ride to work. I saw a couple different things there.
Mm-hmm.
She had her 2-year-old daughter, Hannah, in the car with her, and she was 5 months pregnant. Obviously, Sadia, not the daughter. Expecting her second child at the end of the year. Sadia had arrived in the U.S. from Somalia as a refugee in 2000 when she was 16 years old. She graduated from Washburn High School in Minneapolis and then completed a nursing assistant program. Her plan was to become an RN, but she wanted to wait until after the birth of her second child. Along with being a mother, a wife, and a student, Sadia also volunteered with Somali women in Minneapolis called SWIM, which was a nonprofit neighborhood organization. And with that, she counseled other Somali women on basic health and nutrition issues.
Oh, wow. What a lady.
Yeah. The executive director of the Confederation of Somali Community in Minnesota said that Sadia was a determined achiever who still observed traditional Somali values. She dressed in traditional Islamic fashion and maintained a close relationship with her family and elders. Others described her as active, full of life, peace-loving, very social, outgoing, family-oriented, and full of hope. Sadia, her unborn child, and her daughter, Hannah, their bodies were all pulled from the river 1 week after the collapse of the bridge. Vieira Peck, age 50, and her son Richard Chitt, age 20, were together on the highway that day too and didn't survive the catastrophe. Vieira had fled Cambodia during the Khmer Rouge in 1980. She came to the U.S. and faced the difficulties of learning a new language and new culture. Eventually, she would use her strength and determination to raise 3 children as a single mother. She had 2 daughters and her son, Richard, who had Down syndrome, and with whom she was especially close. Richard was able to read and write and understand things going on around him that sometimes his family forgot he had Down syndrome. His sister said that he exceeded their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
He was an avid sports fan, loving all of Minnesota's teams, but the Minnesota Twins was his favorite. Usually he was pretty laid back, but once in a while he would show a joy and enthusiasm that would make others smile. Maybe he got that from his mother. According to the family, Vieira remained as fun-loving and energized as she had always been. She was able to make others happy, getting them to laugh when they were having a bad day. The memorial erected near the site of the collapse said that Vieira had a grace about her that comes from God. Whenever someone took advantage of her, she simply shrugged it off and said, "It's over now, let it go." On the memorial are words from her husband, Nick. He said he felt fortunate to have her in his life and that he had often wondered why it took him so long to find her. He said now he wondered why their time together had been so brief. He also said, Vera was my soulmate, Richard was my gift. I couldn't find anything about where Vera and Richard were going that day. And as I said at the beginning, it seems completely random to me.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of seems like maybe it was all luck. Bernie Toivonen, I think, owned a painting business with his brother. He was about to leave work that day and realized he'd sat his glasses down somewhere and he couldn't find them. He spent a few minutes looking for them, found them, and then headed out. If he'd been 2 minutes faster leaving work, he would have been about 150 feet further out on the bridge. Instead, he was able to throw his vehicle in reverse and back down the bridge deck as it was falling. 2 cars landed where his vehicle had been moments before. Losing his glasses for a few minutes and his quick thinking gave him just enough of an edge to save his life.
Oh my gosh.
Andy Gannon had just moved back to Minnesota in June of 2006. Having been back for only a year, he still felt the buzz of excitement at the new schools for the kids and the new job opportunities. It was just a new life for him and his family. August 1st started like any other day, with one exception. At work, it was the last day for his office to sell a sponsorship so that they could make their budget. The whole office was under pressure to make their goal, and they worked hard all day. By 3 or 3:30, everyone else had basically resigned themselves to the fact that it wasn't going to happen. They'd kind of given up. And that's when he made the deal. The whole office went crazy, and Andy said it was the greatest moment of his career in that particular position with that company. But because it was so late in the day that the deal was made and paperwork takes time to complete, he left the office about 45 minutes later than he'd planned. He was going to a wake for the father of a coworker who had passed away.
Oh my.
And though he was very happy about making the deal, he was running behind. He also needed to stop for gas and decided to pull into the last gas station just before the I-35 bridge.
Mm-hmm.
As he entered the lot, someone else was leaving, so he was able to pull right up to the pump. The thought went through his head that today was his lucky day. Being in a hurry, he decided that instead of filling up, he'd use the $5 in cash he had instead and then get going. According to the security tape at the gas station, he was there for 2 minutes and 1 second. Pulled in, $5 in gas, pulled out. 2 minutes, 1 second.
Wow.
He pulled into the slow-moving traffic and grumbled at 3 cars that whizzed past him and then abruptly had to stop and try to merge into the nearly standstill traffic.
Mm-hmm.
We've all
done that.
Well, I've grumbled at them. I've never been the one passing.
Yeah.
He was irritated because the driver should have been in line behind him. Instead, they flew past him and then
were able to go
into the line. So now they were trying to merge into the rest of the traffic. He was still back in the back. Then, in bumper-to-bumper traffic on the on-ramp, he saw a, quote, flash go by. And it was a car, he said, on the other side of the barrels. And I'm assuming he was talking about construction barrels that then butted into traffic.
Oh my gosh.
So all of these cars were now several vehicles ahead of him. And if he hadn't stopped for gas, and if those jerks hadn't flown past him and merged into traffic up ahead, he would have been further in line in traffic. He would have been on a more dangerous section of the bridge when it collapsed at 6:05. When it fell, and he fell, his car landed, and he looked up and saw that his car was rolling toward the car in front of him. So he slammed on his brakes and wrenched the steering wheel to one side. If he'd rear-ended the vehicle in front of him, it, and possibly him, would have dropped off the end of the broken section of bridge. But as it was, he was able to stop his car, and the car in front of him was able to stop. When the bridge landed, a cloud of dust enveloped the entire area, and then there was about 3 to 5 seconds of complete silence. Andy and other witnesses say that for those few eerie seconds, you couldn't hear anything.
Oh my
No
gosh.
birds, not the water rushing by in the river, not the sound of people on the bridge. Nothing. Then suddenly there was a cacophony of noise. Horns, people screaming, shouts of people needing help. Andy said he still expected to die, but realized it was taking longer than he thought, so he jumped out of his car and called his wife.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. He's like, he was expecting to die, and he's like, this is taking longer than I thought. I've got time. And then it slowly dawned on him, I haven't died yet. I've got time to call my wife.
Wow.
She didn't answer, so he left her a voicemail explaining what had happened and told her to call 911. When he got out of his car is when he realized that he hadn't fallen over the river. The section of bridge that he was on crashed onto the river road, which ran just adjacent to the actual river.
Mm-hmm.
It also happened to be the same section of road that the school bus was on. Andy had just been traveling in the opposite direction. So, after a gesture from one of the counselors who was trying to open the back door of the bus, which was basically like, dude, what are you doing standing there? Come help me.
Right.
Andy was kind of shaken out of his shock, and he rushed over to help. Other survivors, adults, went to the bus to help as well, because, of course, adults are going to rush to children.
To children, yeah.
Andy also went to the bread truck, the Sara Lee Tasty truck, to try to help the driver, Paul Eichstadt, but concrete had crushed the cab, and he couldn't help him. Andy said that before that day, he had never understood the idea of survivor's guilt. He thought that people who survived traumatic events shouldn't feel guilty, just thankful to be alive. But the collapse of the bridge that day changed that. People who suffer from survivor's guilt often wonder why they survived when others did not. They sometimes feel like they didn't deserve to survive, that there were others that were more successful or had more important jobs, that they had children or family that relied on them more, that they were more philanthropic or giving. In a disaster like the bridge collapse, where one person can die and the person next to them gets through it relatively unscathed, the survivor can be plagued with symptoms of PTSD and thoughts of why. That's why I wanted to focus this episode on the people involved in the disaster. That day, 111 vehicles fell from the 35 West Bridge. 200 people were in those vehicles. 145 people were injured. 13 people died. And some people might look at those figures and say, that isn't too bad, actually. It was rush hour, after all. Only 13 people died out of 200? Some first responders actually said they expected it to be in the range of 50 to 60 people. But the numbers are just math. They don't really tell us about what's important. Those that survived and weren't injured physically could still be suffering to this day from survivor's guilt.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a way to track that, though. Those 145 that were injured but survived, those injuries ranged from scrapes and bruises and broken bones to life-changing traumatic brain injuries and fractured spines. That's why I included some of their stories. I've already talked about 7 of the people who died that day. Along with those, there are 6 others that didn't make it home. And I want to tell you a little bit about each of them, and then I'll explain what caused the bridge they were traveling on to fall out from under them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to apologize ahead of time for some of the names and apologize afterwards for some of the names I've already said, because some of the names are just hard to pronounce. So Sherry Ingebretson was marketing director at Thrivent Financial and had a long day of meetings on August 1st, 2007. Her husband, Ron, said she was looking forward to getting home, and he wasn't sure why she took the 35 West that day. She usually avoided it because of delays due to construction. Ron and their 2 daughters, Jessica, 18, and Anne, 20, were waiting for her to get home that evening so they could sit down to a family dinner. She and Ron had adopted their girls from Colombia when they were babies. Sherry made it a point to talk to her daughters each day, and that day was no exception. She also spoke to Ron about an hour before the collapse. He told her that they would talk about her rough day when she got home, but she never came home. Over 750 people went to her funeral at the family's church,
Oh, wow.
Incarnation Lutheran Church. This included family, friends, co-workers, both past and present, and even young friends of her daughters. Sherry was greatly respected at work and known for a spirited decisiveness that never became caustic. She was candid and gentle, is one of the quotes. But according to many, her life had been all about her daughters. As a dance mom, she took it upon herself each year to gather the costumes for the entire dance team. She would clean and mend the dozens of dance costumes herself.
Oh my gosh.
And she was still taking care of the details for her kids, despite them technically being adults. Her oldest daughter, Anne, was on the college dance team and the dance team had planned a bus trip to go camping. Sherry had bought all the tickets for the event, quote, just to make it easier,
Oh.
she had said at the time. And no doubt that was to make sure that everyone on the team got to go.
Got to go.
The bus trip was scheduled to leave the next day, the day after the collapse. Sherry's friend and neighbor, Tim Tracy, said, quote, whatever she did with tremendous passion. With Sherry, everything was to its fullest. Julia Blackhawk, the youngest of 5 children, was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and lived on the Winnebago Reservation until she was around 5 years old. Her family then moved to Sioux City, where she lived for another 10 years or so. By August 1st, 2007, Julia was 32 and living in Minneapolis with her sons Xavier and Adaro and her mother Carol Blackhawk. Julia was a fan of Horst Rechelbacher, the founder of Aveda Cosmetics, who helped bring the idea of all natural ingredients to cosmetics in the U.S.
Oh.
Julia was a student stylist at Aveda and had even given her mother a cute pixie cut just a few weeks before she passed away.
Oh.
Julia was busy as a student and a full-time mother to 2 boys under the age of 10, but her family described her as an upper. She made others feel better when they were down, usually by making funny faces at the person who was sad. Julia herself had dealt with a tragic loss earlier in the year when her Yorkshire Terrier, Diamond, was hit by a car.
Oh.
Julia had a very sweet relationship with Diamond and was understandably devastated. At a powwow on the Winnebago Reservation in spring, Julia had reconnected with her Native American roots and taken on a new Indian name, Thunder Woman. Her new spirituality had helped her to cope with her loss. Julia's friend and classmate, Liz Ewing, said that Julia was, quote, a sweet girl and everyone loved her. Because of Julia's love of hairstyling, makeup, and fashion, in addition to her warm and friendly nature, Julia's friends would sometimes refer to her as Native Barbie.
How cute.
That is cute, and she is beautiful. Greg Jalstad was part of the 18-member crew that was working to resurface the 35 West Bridge. He was the only one out of the 18-member crew to die. Greg, whose nickname Jolly was both a play on his last name Jalstad and a description of his character, drove a front loader for the crew. Greg was the oldest of 4 kids and had grown up on a farm north of Minneapolis, and that's where he and his wife Lisa still lived, along with his stepchildren, Lisa's kids from a previous marriage, Katie, who was 19, Kim, 18, and Nick, 17. Greg's friends said that home was where he wanted to be. He was very much into sports, having played football in school, and was a Minnesota Vikings fan through and through. He also loved ice fishing. He and his friends, Bill Stalk and Jim Holland, would go out on the frozen lake every winter. And according to Bill and Jim, Greg chose to use old-fashioned methods for ice fishing, and the 3 would eat chili prepared by Lisa Jalstad, his wife, while Greg's friends quizzed him on football trivia. They said Greg usually caught more than he could keep, so he would give it away to others, including senior citizens.
Oh.
Greg's friends also got to spend time on the family farm with Greg and his family, watching sporting events on TV or going deer hunting. Either way, there was always Lisa's cooking to enjoy as well. Greg's remains were the last to be recovered from the collapse site on August 20th. At his funeral, bouquets of flowers in purple and gold, Minnesota Vikings colors, adorned the church. One of his brothers wore a Vikings jersey with Jolly printed on the back. His love of football was evident, but so was his love of his winter hobby. When asked about how his summer was, one mourner explained, Greg would say, "Every day of work is one day closer to ice fishing."
Oh.
Artemio Trinidad Mena, age 29, was a Mexican citizen and wholesale produce salesman who died on August 1st when the bridge collapsed. He was on his way home to his wife, Abundia Martinez, and their 2-month-old daughter. Artemio was so well liked at his job that clients would choose to speak with him rather than calling the warehouse office personnel. He was known to be a jokester, but not the kind that would offend or upset people, and he would tell others not to be down about things. He would say, "You have to live a happy life." Friends and coworkers say he was always positive, despite living paycheck to paycheck and sending money back to his parents and his 3 children that were still in Mexico, who ranged in age from 2 to 11 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Besides his job at New York Plaza Produce, he also worked for a temp agency and at a factory. His funeral service was attended by many from the Lake Street area of Minneapolis, where he both lived and worked. His casket was surrounded by white flowers, and a picture of him in a white cowboy hat was on
Oh.
display. Despite the hardships of being an undocumented immigrant, working hard to make ends meet, and already supporting his kids in Mexico, Artemio was excited to be a father again. He had been planning a big baptism celebration for his 2-month-old daughter, Lorena, at the end of the month. Instead, Lorena was baptized in his honor after his funeral service. Peter Hausman was the youngest child of his family. The South Dakota native was a man of faith, and he followed his Catholic faith to Kenya as a young man. His older brother Leo was a missionary to Kenya, and Peter decided to take up the humanitarian effort needed there. In the village of Kisi, Peter worked to build schools, fight the spread of AIDS, and help make the human rights violations taking place there more widely known. It was there that he also met and fell in love with Helen Ongaki, whom he would marry and have 4 children with.
Oh, wow.
He was working as a computer security specialist in St. Paul, Minnesota, but he and Helen still shared the sense of purpose they discovered in each other in Kenya. They returned to Helen's village every few years, picking up where they left off, and their kids were raised with Peter's Catholic upbringing, but with the knowledge and ideals of Helen's home country. At work, Peter was a hard worker, staying late when needed, mentoring others, and able to explain complex security issues in terms that made it easy for their clients to understand. Peter was the guy everyone could trust, especially when it came to coffee. According to his boss, Jeff Olejnik, Peter put himself in charge of moving the coffee machine and supplies when they moved their office. It was very important to him that everything be set up, all supplies be available and ready to use, and the coffee be ready to brew, because Peter was the one who would be consuming most of it. Along with his love of coffee and his faith, Peter very much loved his family. He had nicknames for each of them, rarely called them by their real names.
Oh.
He doubled over in laughter at the look on Helen's face when she tried to open the door during the blizzard of 1991 and couldn't because of the snow drifts against the house. She asked him, "When do we go home?" He told her, "Anytime you want to." Their oldest son, Andrew, who was 15 at the time of the bridge collapse, said, quote, "He was never out of things to do. How selfless he was, how much he cared about others, how much he sacrificed. We will remember him for all of that." Peter was on his way to pick up a friend, a priest from Kenya, who was coming to dinner, when he called Helen just before 6 p.m. and said he was stuck in traffic. The call cut off suddenly, but when Helen called him back, his phone went straight to voicemail. She wasn't worried for a while. After all, he had told her where he was, and then he was stuck in traffic. He would get there when he got there. But at 6:30, they turned on the TV to watch Wheel of Fortune. That's when they saw the news that the bridge had collapsed at 6:05 p.m. Helen said she knew instantly that he was gone. The family began going to the Holiday Inn near the bridge every day, waiting there along with all the other victims' families, waiting for news that Peter had been found. Her children spoke with Sadia Sahal's family, and they talked about religion, about Christians and Muslims. They got to know each other, they prayed, and they comforted each other. When Peter was found, they told Helen that he had been found half in and half out of someone else's car, and it looked like he'd been trying to save a child. It's very possible that he it's very possible that he had been trying to save Hannah, Sadia's 2-year-old daughter that I spoke of earlier. Peter's daughter, Justina, said, quote, "That makes it okay, because, he probably would have struggled with depression and all that if he had gone away not helping." Last but not least, Christina Sakharofus was born in Detroit, Michigan, but lived in San Diego before moving to White Bear Lake in 2004. Christina had been through a failed relationship and wanted a fresh start. When she joined St. Mary's Greek Orthodox Church, she clicked with her fellow parishioners in the Greek community in the area and quickly won their hearts. When she found out the church didn't have a dance program for children, she took it upon herself to start one. She had participated in ethnic dance groups in both Detroit and San Diego. She and another woman at the church started the program, and before long they had 24 children in the program. Christina even made the costumes herself, adjusting the boys' costumes to be as close to authentic as possible without actually making the boys wear the traditional Greek male skirt. Christina was on her way to teach a dance class when she called another teacher and said she was running late. When news of the collapse got out, her parents, Nick and Aphrodite, began their trip from California to wait for news. The family had already been through 2 difficult traffic-related disasters. Her father, Nick, had been rear-ended about 40 years ago by a truck while driving on the freeway. The crash had caused injuries that left him with speech and memory problems for a couple of years. 20 years later, his youngest daughter, Cynthia, slid off a rainy road and was ejected from her car. She suffered devastating injuries, and her parents were still caring for her in 2007 due to her memory issues, difficulty controlling the left side of her body, and the several seizures and a stroke she had been through since her accident.
Oh my gosh.
Christina's parents waited for news, along with several other victims' families, until she was found on August 17th. Hundreds attended her funeral, many from the church and the local Greek community. Christina was described as gentle with a joyous spirit. St. Mary's priest, Reverend Paul Paris, said, quote, "Joy is like perfume. When you walk into a room with someone who has joy, the scent stays with you. We still have that here." While reading about Christina, I also found that some of the children that went to church went to her church were on the school bus that I talked about at the beginning of the episode.
Oh, wow.
Many of the kids from that bus trip had difficulty after the disaster. They replayed the day in their minds, and their sense of safety was shaken. Some began having trouble in school with their grades, and many of them suffered from bad dreams and difficulty sleeping. The community rallied around them, and the kids were provided with an opportunity to express their feelings through art therapy. The kids painted 2 murals for the first anniversary of the bridge collapse. In one mural, there are hands of all sizes and colors reaching out of the water to hold up the pieces of a broken bridge. It's a sign of togetherness, a sign that disasters like this one affect people of all walks of life. It's a symbol that there are others that will be there to help you up when the world falls out from under you. The murals are metaphors, of course, but when it comes to a key piece of infrastructure, there's that boring word I talked about at the beginning, your world should never fall out from under you. So now we're going to have to ask why. Why would an almost 40-year-old highway collapse catastrophically when there was no tornado or hurricane or earthquake? So basically, it all started in 1965. That's when the design plans for the bridge were approved by both the design firm and state and federal bodies. Let me give a little history first. So the bridge opened in 1967, and by 2007, it was the path for 140 to 150,000 vehicles a day to cross the Mississippi River.
A day?
A day.
Wow.
Inspections were carried out on the bridge regularly. National Bridge Inspection Standard requirements included routine inspections within every 24 months, quote, fracture critical member inspections within every 24 months, and underwater inspections within every 60 months. the 35W bridge had routine inspections yearly beginning in 1971, fracture critical inspections yearly starting in 1994, and underwater inspections every 48 months beginning in 2000. That means it actually had more frequent inspections than it was actually required to by the National Bridge Inspection Standards.
Yeah, for all of the things.
Yeah, for all. On top of that, the Minnesota Department of Transportation had noted fatigue cracking on other similar bridges in the state, so it had started additional inspections of the bridge.
What the heck?
They
Wow.
contracted with the University of Minnesota's Civil Engineering
Oh.
and URS Corporation, which is a global engineering firm that had a location in Minneapolis.
Cool.
And they were doing inspections for Minnesota DOT.
Wow.
They also, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, also allocated $1.5 million to retrofit the bridge because of fatigue cracking.
Wow.
The retrofit project was supposed to start in January of 2008, about 4 months too late.
Oh my gosh.
The thing is, the bridge had actually been deemed structurally deficient beginning in 1991 due to the things the inspectors had noticed on the bridge throughout the years. They rated the bridge as poor due to conditions like, and these are all directly from the NTSB report, failing paint, surface rust and corrosion, section lost on almost every type of main truss structural member, numerous poor weld details on main truss members, and some bearing assemblies that appeared to have insufficient movement. So the bearings are basically, truss bridges like that have to be able to sway a little bit.
Yeah.
Some of them were basically just because of rust and stuff, corrosion, they
Were
were locked in
rigid.
place.
Oh my gosh.
And then the members, what they call members, are just basically any of the beams, any of the pieces. But according to the investigation by the NTSB, which is the National Transportation Safety Board, none of those issues were the reason that the bridge collapsed.
What?
All those things that they were retrofitting the bridge for, all those things that they deemed it structurally deficient for, that they deemed it to be in poor condition, were not what caused the bridge to collapse.
That is crazy.
The inspectors did see and photograph the problem beforehand, though. In 1999, researchers from the Civil Engineering Department at the University of Minnesota were contracted to perform a fatigue study of the bridge. They took photographs of gauges that are made to measure strain on the bridge truss members. In 2003, URS Corporation took photos of almost every structural element of the bridge as part of their evaluations. After the collapse, the NTSB reviewed all these photos and discovered that they all showed what would become the source of the collapse. 4 gusset plates were visible in the pictures, and they were bowing. The NTSB accident report defines a gusset plate fairly simply as a metal plate used to unite multiple structural members of a truss.
Okay.
It's a giant piece of metal, about 6 feet by 10 feet, which is 1.8 meters by 3 meters. Though it's not exactly that measurement because it's not a perfect rectangle, but you get it. And keep in mind that one word they used, unite. The gusset plate is the thing that kind of holds it all together.
Oh,
it's
brother.
basically like a joint.
A joint, yeah.
They hold on to all the other support structures. They are freaking massive. And in the pictures from 1999 and 2003, they're bowing. A couple, like 4 of them are.
Like, even to an untrained eye, you can be like...
They are visibly bowing. Bending just slightly out of shape. Now, between 99 and 2003, they couldn't see much of a difference. Like, it wasn't like there was an extreme difference between those 4 years.
But they were still bowing.
But they were bowing. When they pulled these plates out of the Mississippi River, they were twisted and cracked. There was a security camera on the building facing the bridge that was motion activated, and it caught the collapse of the bridge. You can find it online very easily. Investigators knew where to start investigating, like, because they watched that video and they could tell how the bridge started to collapse,
Oh,
like where
wow.
the collapse started. So they investigated other possibilities, of course.
Mm-hmm.
They looked into metal fatigue since they knew the bridge had problems with that, but none of the fractures were located where there had been noted signs of fatigue on the inspections. They wondered if their de-icing systems had caused the issues with corrosion. And there was corrosion. It's a metal bridge, and it gets inundated with snow and ice and negative temperatures in the winter, and then it can get up into the 90s or 30s in Celsius in the summer. But the corrosion wasn't bad enough to have weakened the bridge to the point of collapse. The only other contributing factor they found was weight. The bridge was built in the 60s. It had been resurfaced and repaved numerous times. There was more and more traffic driving over it every year, and there was a construction crew on it that day. And they had been working on resurfacing it again. And that day they had hundreds of tons of gravel and sand and construction equipment stored on the bridge. And it sat directly over the bowed and weakening gusset plates.
Oh my gosh.
But if you remember, I said that the whole thing started in 1965.
Right.
The gusset plates were huge, about 6 by 10 and a half an inch thick. But they should have been an inch thick. So for 40 years, those plates managed to hold the bridge up until that one day during rush hour traffic with tons of road resurfacing supplies sitting directly on top of them, and they could no longer do their job. They couldn't keep it together anymore. The bridge was designed with gusset plates that were too thin and without redundancies. Without redundancies, when those plates gave out, there was nothing left to support the structure. Obviously, that means the designers of the bridge screwed up, but they weren't the only ones. The design firm miscalculated, but the design was then approved by state and federal bodies. So did they miscalculate too? Or did they just sign off on the designs? Was that something that happened way back then? Or does that still happen today?
Mm-hmm.
So the gusset plates being too thin were missed in the original plans. But why didn't the inspectors note anything about them bowing when they took the photos of them before the collapse?
Yes.
The Minnesota State Legislature conducted their own independent investigation of the disaster. During their investigation, they interviewed a Minnesota Department of Transportation Metro District Bridge Safety Inspection Engineer. Try to say that 5 times.
Fancy.
Fast. The engineer was a registered professional and was a specialist in performing the fracture critical type of bridge inspections. He had joined Minnesota DOT in 1997 and had observed the bowing of the gusset plates. He told them that he had consulted with another inspector about them and was told that the bowing was from when the bridge was originally constructed and was nothing to worry about. It's like, oh no, that was from when the bridge was being put together that they got bent. The engineer also said that they showed no other signs of distress like peeling paint or elongation of rivet holes, no cracks at the welds, no cracking or crushing of the bridge deck above them. And the reason they weren't put in the reports, quote, our inspections are to find deterioration or findings of deterioration on maintenance. We do not note or describe construction or design problems.
I'm sorry, but that's some bull.
Basically, it was the same for all the inspectors.
That's not our job.
Anyone who noticed the plates assumed it was from original construction. They didn't take the time to measure them, and they didn't make any calculations themselves. Basically, the design of the bridge wasn't what they were there for. That math was decades old at that point, and they were basically like, we're here to check for maintenance. We're here to check for anything that's gone wrong now. That is not what we're here for.
That is idiotic.
It's not our job to check to see if the design of the bridge was okay. So, and I get that to a point. You see a major structure of the bridge. This is the thing that holds it all together. And you see this giant 6 foot by 10 foot plate bending. and you don't think,
it's like it's their
this
job.
115-foot tall bridge. You know?
It's crazy because it's their job to know what they're looking at, whether it's maintenance stuff and it's not to do with that is a huge safety thing, period. You would think they would always be required.
Yeah.
Like, you might be on that bridge, under that bridge, or whatever.
Right.
And it fall down.
It's like if you go to take your car to the mechanic and you say, I need you to rotate my tires. And they're under there and they see that, you know, your axles are getting ready to break in two.
But that's not what they're there for.
Oh, but I'm there to rotate the tires. I don't. The axle's not any of my business. What?
Yeah, that's stupid.
It's like, you should at least tell me, dude.
That's negligence.
So, the NTSB determined that poor bridge design was the main cause of the collapse. The poor design was not caught by state or federal parties that then signed off on it. Due to insufficient quality control measures for reviewing and approving design plans and calculations. So basically, they may have reviewed the designs and stuff, but they didn't fact check and double check calculations and stuff as closely as they should have in the original design plans. And they signed off on them. Inspectors never raised any official concerns about the bowing of the plates, and were untrained regarding the effective bridge load on the gusset plates. Or they would have, I guess, said something about it.
What the heck?
And then heavy loads of construction equipment and supplies were the straw that broke the camel's back, basically.
Wow.
On May 2nd, 2008, the state of Minnesota reached a $38 million agreement to compensate victims of the disaster. The last of the lawsuits against URS Corporation were settled for $52.4 million in August of 2010.
Oh, wow.
That was the last of the lawsuits. Who knows how much before that?
Mm-hmm.
In November of 2012, Jacobs Engineering Group, which was the successor to the original design firm, paid $8.9 million in a lawsuit brought against them by the state of Minnesota.
Oh.
A new bridge named the St. Anthony Falls I-35 West Bridge was built. In fact, it opened less than a year after the old one fell. The new bridge is a state-of-the-art smart bridge. It's covered in sensors that send data back about any strains or overloads that it's, quote, feeling. It also has camera coverage, so the structural support can have eyes on it at all times. It's basically got sensors and cameras.
I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah. A memorial was built to the 13 victims that didn't make it home that day. But there are so many more victims than those 13.
Yeah.
I've talked about some of them in the episode. The kids on the school bus, the people who waited for their husbands to come home, the families who waited for days to hear about words about their loved ones, the survivors that suffered life-altering injuries. After the collapse, there was an uproar about the infrastructure in the U.S. It was shocking how many bridges were deemed structurally deficient, just as 35W was. People actually started talking about upgrading and replacing and repairing our infrastructure. Americans decided that the word wasn't boring anymore. We wanted to talk about it. We wanted to make sure that no one else had to go through what the people of Minneapolis were going through. Unfortunately, Americans are fickle people. By the time a bill is being passed to improve our infrastructure, we've already forgotten about it, or we're yelling, well, who's going to pay for this? So the 2025 Infrastructure Report Card, which I didn't know existed, is pretty telling. Out of the roughly 623,000 bridges in the U.S., 6.8% are rated as poor, like 35W was. That's 42,364 bridges that we and our loved ones are driving over every day that could collapse if they aren't repaired soon.
That is terrifying.
And that is the tragic story of the collapse of the I-35 West Mississippi River Bridge.
Wow. I don't really have the words.
That was a lot.
That was a lot.
And I'm sure y'all heard it in my voice. I had to pause a few times to,
collect herself.
To collect myself.
Yes.
That was just a lot of human tragedy.
Hearing the personal stories.
Reason. Yes. Because people.
Yes, because people.
Because they took pictures of what was going wrong.
I know, it blows my mind.
And even if they weren't, like, that bridge was not fit to be driven on by 150,000 cars a day.
Yeah.
It needed to be replaced. It was structurally deficient and in poor condition.
And had been for, 11 years?
Yeah, well, it was deemed structurally deficient in 1991, and this was 2007.
Oh, 16 years. 16 years.
Yeah.
Look at me not doing math.
And they, it's like, something should have been done already.
They were, quote, living on borrowed time.
Yes, they were.
As they say.
Yeah. So even if the gusset plates weren't bowing because they were the right thickness, something was going to happen if something wasn't done soon.
Yeah.
And I guess they had that retrofit thing they were going to start doing because they thought that was going to fix the problem where everything, the fatigue issues were getting taken care of.
Yeah.
So I guess that was helpful, but
that
bridge needed to be replaced.
It wouldn't have addressed the issue of the gusset plate, right?
No.
I would assume.
No. So yeah, if the gusset plate had been correct in the beginning, then at least they were going to address the issue of the fatigue.
Right.
But the bridge still needed replacing. I mean, that's a harsh climate.
Yeah, and it had been up since the 60s.
Yeah. It was a 40-year-old bridge.
Yeah, that's a really harsh climate.
Yeah.
Regardless of the season.
And then the fact that it's in the river.
Yeah.
As the Mississippi floods and goes down and moves and stuff like that, you never know. Like, I know it has, concrete supports, the, pylons or whatever that it sits on or whatever. But the banks and stuff shift, and I don't know if that has anything to do with fracture. I don't know. I'm not an engineer.
You're not an infrastructure.
These people weren't either. So...
We seem to understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, but I mean, I had to look up stuff, and I don't know if you've ever looked through a NTSB report before.
No,
but they're really interesting.
Really?
Yeah, they actually have a glossary at the beginning or at the end, really, but they have a section with the terms that they use.
That's fantastic.
So that you can, and they're publicly.
They're public record.
Yeah, they're public record, so you can find them and download them, and it's a 178-page report, and they have diagrams of things.
It is pretty amazing what they can figure out.
Yeah.
Because normally you hear it when there's a plane crash or something.
Yeah.
And that's usually what I've heard and seen videos and stuff of. And I prefer to get the information from somebody on that video who's telling me what they said, but
I looked to see there was when I did the Surfside condo collapse, and I had that YouTube video, and that guy that I was like, he told me everything and he was real smart. I looked to see if he had one on this, but he didn't.
Bummer.
I was like, dang dude, you could have told me what was going on and I would have understood you. So then I had to look at the NTSB report and then look up words. I was like, what does "the" mean? But anyway. So it was interesting, but yeah, the hardest part was definitely the people, and there's so many stories and so many interviews, and these poor people were just, the stories of the people have always gotten, it's always interested me to see where were they going, what were they doing, were they going home from work? Were they, going to pick somebody up? Were they going to, it's always that kind of stuff has always interested me the most about stuff, because it seems so random.
Yeah.
And this just proves it.
And literally, because you have the one guy who was later than normal and he made it.
Yeah. Yeah. The guy that stopped for gas.
And then the people got in front of him.
Yeah.
And he was all like, "Arr."
Some people were running late getting home and they were killed.
Yeah.
Some people were running late going to a funeral and had to stop for gas, but his running late put him further back.
Yeah.
And it's it's completely just arbitrary. It doesn't, depends where you were. And the people that were in front of him, we don't know if one of those, like he was using some key phrases, I'm sure, describing those drivers that flew past him.
Right.
Maybe one of those people was one of the people that died. I don't know.
Right.
That could be one of the people that got ahead of him, and then their car fell in the river and they were found 15 days later.
And that's another thing, having to get through the rubble and it taking weeks to get to some of the people.
Yeah. And the way the bridge collapsed, there are a lot of pictures, and of course,
I do plan on looking that up, so I can see what it looked like.
The main span of the bridge, I think the ultimate height was like 110 to 115 feet. So for others, that's like 30 some meters, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That main span of the bridge it fell basically straight down, so it looked like it was just crossing the river. But
like then, just kind of flat down kind of thing.
But then, like, pieces of it broke off. There was the construction equipment that fell. There was all the sand and gravel that fell. The span of the bridge broke into pieces, but laying flat.
Right.
And then, people's cars. There was one girl that she fell. Her car fell, and she said it basically nosedived. So she said it did not stop until her front passenger tire hit the riverbed. And since it was at that angle, water was coming up through the engine bay and through the vents in her car. So by the time her passenger tire hit the riverbed, her car was already full of water and she was drowning. And she managed to get out.
That is terrifying.
Yeah. That's one of the things that scares me the most. Like, because and they went through, I saw it, but they went through like how many people died from drowning, how many people died from crush injuries, and then the one tractor trailer driver guy, the concrete had hit the cab of his truck, but his truck also was on fire.
Was on fire, yeah.
And I don't know which thing killed him, or if it was a combination, if he was trapped or what. But there are like 3 things in this right away that are terrifying to me: drowning, fire, and being caught or trapped, which claustrophobia.
Same.
And being crushed like that.
Yeah.
Like being stuck somewhere I can't get out of is so scary to me.
Agree.
Even in a crowd of people, if I can't move freely, stresses me out.
Yeah.
So
I take medication for that. That has helped a lot, but I do the same thing.
Yeah. And that's why I had so many warnings on this one, because I was like, this entire story is terrifying to me.
Yeah. That's why, like, when you go over a bridge, like, I know when we were kids and we would go to the beach.
Yes.
It was equal parts terrifying and really, it was just so beautiful, but terrifying.
Yes.
And I remember thinking the entire time, what do I do if we fall off? What do I do? Because none of us knew how to swim.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. If the car falls and we live through the fall, you die.
I'm dying.
We couldn't swim.
Yeah. None of us could.
And it was airtight. Like, it wasn't airtight, so the water was coming in. That was all there was to it.
Yeah.
And back in those days, you had the windows you could actually roll down.
Right. Now, back in the old days.
Now everything shorts out.
Yeah, and
you can't roll windows down. So unless you remember roll your window down while you're falling, you're probably not going to be able to get out because the water pressure and stuff, The window's short and you can't roll those down, and the door locks short out and you can't roll those down. So
and our cars were like made of steel back in the day, which actually helped us.
Yeah, it could break the water. Now they're plastic. They should just
they're just plastic.
But I think about that too. And then when you go through the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel, where it's like a bridge and then it's a tunnel underwater,
and then that's terrifying.
You ever seen that movie Daylight? Oh my gosh,
that is one of my favorite movies.
It is so terrifying.
I just watched that a few months ago, and I was thinking about that while you were talking.
Yeah. And then when you're going through that tunnel and you see water trickling down the side, you're like, what? No.
I just put my blinders on.
Yeah.
Keep on going down.
Don't mess with me, tunnel.
Yeah, it's scary.
So yeah, that's terrible.
Wow.
I'm not for it.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. Sorry, I got a little verklempt there.
That is okay. It's totally understandable.
Yeah, that was a tough
We
one.
all got a little verklempt. That.
Verklempt.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, that was very lovely.
I'm trying to soothe their emotions.
Maybe we should do some ASMR now. Ooh, good. Yeah, that sounds like rain.
Okay, guys.
Okay,
no, really. Thank you guys for joining us again.
Yes, thanks. And we'll talk to you next time.
And don't forget, guys, watch for deer.